Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to a kind of just like a chill Friday live stream, just to really just talk about some things and put things into perspective regarding Boost Mobile. So that's the hidden underlining subject here is Boost Mobile and what's going on with them. What up, Gene? Welcome in and glad to have you here. Um, and I think sometimes, this is like one of the things that's important about history. When you look at the past and you look at what's gone on in the past days, it kind of gives you an idea of what to expect in the future. Um, and so, like, Sprint was one of those really weird days. What's up, Titus? Happy Friday to you, man. It was one of those really weird and strange things. If I could be honest with everybody, Sprint literally was like a catastrophe of like just all things that could go wrong with the company. First off, let me get a sound check and let me know if you guys, can hear me clearly, if the background music is overpowering so I can adjust the volumes. I just want to make sure that, everything's on point before I get started. I know it's not the usual cup of tea of most people, but sometimes I just want to do live streams of things that I want to talk about and not always, what's relevant. Sounds good. Awesome. I'm also going to be talking about the Google Pixel 10 at the end of the broadcast. We're getting very, very close to it, and just kind of some decisions that I made regarding the Pixel 10 and what do I intend to do, going on in the future and everything. So all that, in today's episode. But first off, a lot of things that I'll say on a personal level, I can say because I formerly worked for Sprint before they were merged to T-Mobile. So there's a lot of insight that I have, and that's the reason that I've been, for years when Sprint comes up as a subject, I'm able to kind of give insight to it because I worked for them. I was on the inside. As a matter of fact, there is a playlist where I was helping people to, I guess in a way, kind of like know how to deal with customer care and customer service, and also the retention team when talking with them. It's because I was giving people insight on how to deal with all that. I mean, that was a crazy time. Working for Sprint was absolutely crazy. Glad for the sound check, Gene. Thanks for letting me know you can hear me clearly. That's good. I just want to make sure that like the background music is not overpowering. You know what I mean? But like right now today, Boost is faced with a dilemma, right? And obviously, when you look at the entire aspect of everything that's going on with Boost Mobile and the FCC, you can really tell the FCC is not on Boost Mobile's side. There's like so many things that they are literally pushing at Boost Mobile. It almost feels like as if like they want Boost to fail. If that makes sense to anybody out there. I mean, it really does feel that way just from, different news coverage that I see, like Sneed and Rando Geek talking about this. So, yeah. So how far the Pixel 6 update coming? What do you mean by how far? Like, do you mean like how long is it going to be supported for? Because I'll tell you that the Pixel 6 will probably get one more year of like a major software support. So after Android 16 it'll get Android 17, and that will probably be the end of life for the Pixel 6. The Pixel 7 will get Android 17 and Android 18, and that will be its end of life, and then so on. The FCC is making it hard for them to make business decisions. Yes they are. And it's detrimental. It really is. If we were to just shift back to, or shift to, not shift back, but shift to just, 3 carriers. And here's why. With the 3 carrier play puts the power in the carrier's hands. So raising prices is not going to be an issue for T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T because there's only three of them that you can go to. And if you move away from that, you're going into prepaid and MVNO territory. And as you guys see, MVNO and prepaid territory has limitations than the carriers, right? The carriers really just kind of like push mainly, fully unlimited plans with some side features like some streaming service platforms, some, app subscriptions that are paid, by the carrier, right? The carrier gives it to you for free, right? So that's the way that I look at postpaid today. Postpaid it's become more of like you get full unlimited service with your cell phone plus, a free pizza weekly or a monthly subscription to Netflix or, a monthly subscription to Hulu. It's become that, right? Prepaids have adopted the fully unlimited but a scaled back version, so not at top speeds that postpaid customers would get. We do know that, and they get a little bit of perks here and there, like Amazon on them or Google One support, whatever it may be, right? And then you have the MVNO sides that have limitations. Most of them have limitations, right? Like you look at Google Fi, it has limitations. You look at Boost Mobile, it has limitations. So when looking, when looking at all of this and seeing, like what Sprint did back in the day, and how they failed, and then you look at Boost Mobile, if you were to try and compare the two, and because people tend to kind of make a comparison, I'm guilty of it. I've made a comparison, but when you really look at like everything that Sprint has done before its demise, and you look at Boost Mobile, it's actually kind of opposite. Certain things Boost Mobile is doing is very similar to what Sprint did, right? Like, giving out discounted, second or third lines on a family plan, or even giving out a free line on a family plan. Like the way that they finance phones, all those things are very similar to what Sprint did in the last few years of its time. But everything else that Boost is doing is different. And so, that would be weird. Rodrigo, what's up, man? Welcome in. Glad to have you here. So what was it, about Sprint that failed? And you have to look at, the CEOs that ran the company, right? What's his name? Mr. Forsey, who was the CEO before Mr. Hess became CEO. The acquisition of Sprint by SoftBank, Masayoshi-san, basically having these ambitious ideas that, and focus that literally didn't help out. That's a terrible move. What's a terrible move? So I mean, when you think about all of it that Sprint did, in the end, the primary focus was basically Masayoshi-san was more focused on trying to purchase T-Mobile, trying to merge with T-Mobile, right? If you guys remember back in the day, AT&T and T-Mobile tried to get approval for a merger and it was denied. And then afterwards, Sprint came along, but Sprint was like number 3 out of the 4 carriers. So Sprint was like, we want to buy T-Mobile because T-Mobile's parent company, Deutsche Telekom, was putting T-Mobile up for sale if someone wanted to buy it. So SoftBank just had these ambitions to want to purchase T-Mobile and merge. And they kind of neglected their own company, Sprint, which, because they neglected their own company, Sprint, a lot of the higher ups, a lot of the management, they basically neglected Sprint. They are trying to force everyone on the $60 plan. I mean, it's a terrible move, per se, yes. I know, like, for customers, they don't like to be told what plan to be on. Of course, Dish is going to try to do it. They're definitely going to try to do it. I mean, look at how much debt they have. They're up in the wazoo when it comes to debt. Their finances aren't looking that great. And the only way to pay debt is to make money, right? The same way like when you have bills. You have bills you got to pay, so you got to work a job or you got to run a business to make money to pay that debt. And that's the way that they're looking at it. So yeah, a lot of the benefits are going to pull towards you having to subscribe to their $60 plan. What people don't understand is the first 2 years when Boost Mobile was known as Boost Infinite. So I'm talking to the postpaid side of it, not the prepaid. Boost Infinite wasn't making any money. They were in the red. I know that much from being a former internal person. They weren't making any money. They were making no profits at all whatsoever. Rooming phone upgrades for customers on the $25 plan is rough. I might have to switch now. Yeah, I mean, switching is always an option out there, Then if Boost tries to force people on the $60 plan and they don't want the plan, they will leave and go somewhere else. So like, here's something that's gonna really like strike a nerve with some people. I get that, like myself and y'all watching, we are very vocal about what we think, right? We like deals. We want to have deals, but this is not Burger King. You can't have it your way. And at the same time too, we are but a small blip of how many people are on Boost Mobile. I mean, if you were to compare Boost Mobile to, say, Verizon, of course, Boost Mobile has a lower subscriber count. But that's not the weight that we carry. We kind of forget that. Like, we think like we carry all this weight, and then if we go somewhere else, they're just going to completely tank. But no, because you also got to think, how many people out there are more concerned about getting a new device, right? Like right now on Boost Mobile, there are those people who are interested in the iPhone 16e. If you port your number over to Boost Mobile, you get the iPhone 16e for $50. Yes, you have to be on the $60 plan. There are people who are willing to be on the $60 plan just to get the iPhone 16e. And they'll stay if they can't get the phone unlocked, which, Boost policy is 1 year. You have to be active with that phone 1 year on Boost Mobile before they'll unlock it to go on any other carrier. Yeah, the thing with Boost Mobile is that they can't offer unlimited. They're not allowed. You know what I mean? First of all, their own native network is not everywhere. So they don't really have the leg up to actually go fully unlimited with their network only being in like the major metro cities. They're slowly expanding it out, but the FCC is making it harder for them to do that. Now, when it comes to them being relying on AT&T and T-Mobile, they're only allowed access by what AT&T and T-Mobile give. Now, ask yourselves this. Do you guys really think that AT&T or T-Mobile is going to allow Boost Mobile to give their customers fully unlimited data? I mean, they already have an MVNO agreement, which allows Boost to use AT&T and T-Mobile's network. But they're still competitors. So, yeah, I mean, if they offered more, that would be great, which is what AT&T and T-Mobile know. They know, Jordan, that you would rather stay with Boost Mobile if they gave you fully unlimited at $60. That's why they won't let them give anyone unlimited data. They have to have some form of cap. They have to have a throttle point. That's one of the disadvantages. Like, Boost Mobile is fighting an uphill battle. They're not allowed to give customers fully unlimited when using their partnered network's network. They can't. So they automatically lose to T-Mobile and AT&T on that ground. Their own network is still being built out presently, and it's not available everywhere. So that's also a tough spot. Right. I mean, so here's the thing. I've kind of hinted at the reasonings why, but these are things beyond Boost Mobile's control. Okay? With limitations set on them by AT&T and T-Mobile, it's really at AT&T and T-Mobile who govern that aspect. Speed and data allotment is controlled by their partners, not by them. So, requesting that they move it up from, was it 256 kilobits per second to 512 kilobits per second. I mean, which is what it should be, right? Because that's what they advertise. That's Boost's big mistake right there. If they're advertising that you're throttled down to 512 kilobits per second, and if people are doing speed tests and it's only pulling 256 kilobits per second, you look like a liar. So that's where Boost falls short. But as far as the limitations, it's the contract deal that they have. If they even tried, which they can't because they don't have access to T-Mobile's network and they don't have access to AT&T's network on that level. So they can't go in there and fudge the numbers and fudge the limitations to give their customers more. T-Mobile and AT&T kind of do that. So here, to give you guys a little bit of inside trade secrets with these companies. When you create an account on Boost Mobile, whether you port your number over or you get a new number, an account is created on Boost Mobile. But because they have a partnership with T-Mobile and AT&T, a sub account is created on their end. So yes, AT&T reps could access your Boost Mobile account. Of course, what it's going to show, obviously, your mobile number or your MDN, right? And then the MIN. And then underneath that, it's going to show that it is an MVNO, and it's going to show Dish on the AT&T side and on the T-Mobile side too as well. And so if a T-Mobile rep or an AT&T rep is looking at their own company systems and your account pulls up, they'll realize that it's a sub account because it's an MVNO line on a different provider. Because sometimes, if you guys didn't know this, the reason why, and this was so stupid, AT&T and T-Mobile really didn't want people to have, really didn't want Boost Care reps to have full access to be able to troubleshoot network issues. So when people called in and they were like their 5G was horse crap and they could barely load a page, if you were on the black SIM on Boost Mobile, which was AT&T, or if you were on the blue SIM, which was T-Mobile, or if you were on the rainbow SIM, but you were, defaulting to AT&T or T-Mobile because Dish 5G was not in your area. So they have their own system that allows them to troubleshoot network connectivity. But there's only so much they can do on their end. And if it's something that has to do with the actual parent network, they would have access to go in, but they wouldn't have full capabilities to really kind of dive in there and figure out what's provisioned and what needs to be changed in the provisioning. So they would have to rely on T-Mobile, or they would have to rely on AT&T, their tech support in order to assist if it was that deep of a problem. And of course, that takes time, right? Because now you're like on a three-way call, or you're on a call with the tech support and the rep has to bounce back in between. So when they're putting you on hold, they really weren't just letting you sit there and doing nothing. They were actually on another call with tech support from those network tech support agents, and they were bouncing in between. And sometimes they, they would be caught up with the tech support rep that they would like have to like tell that tech support rep, like, hey, can you hang on a second? Let me check in with the customer, let them know I'm still working on it. And it was crap because sometimes, and I know this from personal experience, sometimes they would be talking to tech support and they'll be like, hey, I have the customer on the other line. I'm going to place you on a brief hold real quick. Let me check in with them. They'll be like, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Check in on your customer. As soon as you switch to talk to the customer, that tech support rep would hang up because he doesn't want to be on the call. And then you're like, crap. Now you got to like call back in, right? And like one of the things is that we can't tell the customers on the phone, like, hey, I'm reaching out to T-Mobile tech support, because then the customer's going to flip out. Like, why? Why are you talking to T-Mobile tech support? Like they don't get it. That's how you explained it. In reality, this throttle speeds probably are not going to change anytime soon. It depends between what Boost Mobile, AT&T, and T-Mobile, what they negotiate, right? Same thing could be said about Google Fi. Like, I'm currently using Google Fi as my service provider. And recently, right, Google Fi had their plan changed, right? So the most premium plan that they have, the unlimited premium, now gives you 100 gigs of data, where before that, it only gave you 50 gigabytes of high-speed data before you're throttled. And the Simply Unlimited plan got changed to Unlimited Plus, and it went from giving you only, what was it? It was 35 gigs of high-speed data to 50 gigs of high-speed data. And then they brought in a new plan called the Essentials plan. And that gives you 35 gigabytes of data And this was like Google Fi competing with T-Mobile, right? T-Mobile set the boundaries of what Google Fi was allowed to do for their customers because everything else that Google Fi was offering literally would blow T-Mobile out of the water. Like if T-Mobile gave them fully unlimited data access on all their plans, then T-Mobile would lose customers to Google Fi because the one thing that Google Fi does give, obviously, the 6 months of YouTube Premium, the Google One cloud subscription because you're a Google Fi customer, you get, the international calls to like over 50 plus countries from the US, and then you get usage outside the US up to 200 plus countries, and it's not something that you have to add on, pay additional for, right? T-Mobile would definitely lose out on that because on T-Mobile, if you're going to travel, you're going to use your phone internationally, you got to subscribe to an international package, which is bare minimum, right? Like they'll give you like maybe, 1,000 minutes to talk, 1,000 text messages, and 1 gigabyte of data for like $50 or some shit. I'm just hypothetically saying it's not like actually like the international plan, but international plans like on Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile are expensive. Google Fi built into their fully unlimited, well, they're not their fully, but their top premium unlimited plan. It's built into that. It's also built into their flexible plan. So yeah, they would totally dominate. This is why T-Mobile doesn't allow Google Fi to get unlimited access to their network. Like I would always say, I would be cool if Google Fi had Metro by T-Mobile's access to T-Mobile's network at a fully unlimited rate. I could deal with that, right? QCI 10, QCI 9. I could deal with that type of priority, and T-Mobile customers can get QCI 6, QCI 7, right, for postpaid. But they won't do that. So not necessarily that Boost Mobile won't ever get the opportunity to change. They just got to have the leverage, and that's what they're trying to do by building out their Dish 5G network, is to have that leverage. If most of their customers were on their own 5G network, they would have the grounds, because of course, AT&T and T-Mobile is about business. They want money. So Dish has to pay them every year for that network access. And they don't want to lose out where Boost customers just solely depend on the Boost network and don't even require the need to have AT&T or T-Mobile's network access. So Boost has to get that leverage up. And this is why the whole history of Sprint is what I'm still going to talk about it, but we just kind of got sidetracked there on the whole Boost Mobile thing, because Boost Mobile is kind of making some of the mistakes that Sprint made. And also, they have the FCC pretty much like rolling down on them. So it's making that climb up the mountain. It's making it a lot harder for Boost than what it needs to be. And while I've been a big supporter of Boost Mobile since way back in the day when they were, using the IDEN network and the push to talk, the Where You At campaign, it was all crazy. No, you're not wicked, like Brandon. I've only been on for like 23 minutes, and I kind of been talking about Boost Mobile and like the things that it's going through. I'm going to touch into Sprint. My first phone on Sprint was in 2024, which was the Sanyo PM 8200 that I purchased from Radio Shack. Oh man, Radio Shack, that's so nostalgic. I remember Radio Shack. Radio Shack's awesome. I used to go there for the hell of it. Like, people would always just be weird. They would see me in Radio Shack, and it was just like, this kid's gonna steal something, because I would just be in there just messing around with stuff they had. How many of y'all miss Radio Shack? Let me know. Please do let me know. But I mean, going back to like the whole Sprint thing, Jordan, I appreciate the conversation on Boost Mobile. I'm still gonna talk about Boost Mobile throughout this, but the Sprint just really wasn't listening to its customers. So like, remember like this, right? Sprint wanted, Masayoshi-san, sorry, butchered his name, who basically ran SoftBank. He was more interested in a merger with T-Mobile. Like, he wanted to merge with T-Mobile. Like, that was his primary focus. So a lot of people were abandoning Sprint at the upper levels, really weren't paying attention. So they came out with all these plans like unlimited freedom, right? Cool idea. Fully unlimited, right? Sprint was like literally offering fully unlimited out the gate. They were using the ad campaign 1% difference between them and Verizon. They had, I think his name was Paul, who did the Can You Hear Me Now? They hired him to start doing advertisement for Sprint. They were starting to make some sort of effort. I mean, I can't tell you guys how many times people called in on Sprint and they were like, explain to me what makes you guys different by 1% from Verizon. Which, talking to a regular person that does not care really about mobile technology, they just want their smartphones to work. I mean, you could talk all that jargon all you want, and then at the end of the conversation, it's like, so what does that mean for me? Because I can tell you right now, one of the biggest complaints that Sprint had when it came to customers who wanted to port out to T-Mobile, because that's who they were going to, it was because Sprint phones didn't have the ability to be on a voice phone call and browse the internet at the same time. The only way you could do that was if you were connected to Wi-Fi. But if you were like away from home and you got a phone call on your smartphone and you took that call on your smartphone and someone was like, yo, pull up Google Maps and see if you can map it to where I'm at, you couldn't. The data was off. The data was absolutely off. You couldn't do nothing with it. And that was always everyone's complaint when they call in. Why people will call in and be like, I want to port out. Because I worked the retention department. So I was the last person that you spoke to get your account number, to get your transfer pin, to get, to make sure that your porting information was correct. And it was so terrible because AT&T and T-Mobile, like they knew Sprint was in big trouble, so much that the store reps at AT&T and at T-Mobile would pretend to be the customer, and like they weren't the customer, but they would call in for the customer. They'd be like, look, they're gonna try to get you to stay, so I'll just call them for you. Okay, I just need your verification information and stuff so I can verify your account. And it would call in, and you could hear people in the background talking about somebody getting like the BlackBerry or getting an iPhone or something like that, and you're like, oh. And then the rep would pretend to be the customer and be like, yeah, I'm in store right now, I'm going to port out, I just want my port out information. And of course, being retention, we have to offer. The rule was, even though I know a lot of customers were so annoyed by it, the rule for my department that we had to follow or we got fired was we had to make 3 offers. We had to make 3 offers before we gave the account number and any other security information needed to process a number port out. We had to make 3 offers. It's really funny because like when I tell people that I used to work for Sprint and I work for the retention department, they would, it would just always come up, right? They were like, oh yeah, I hated them. Sprint was the worst. And when I tried to leave them to go to T-Mobile, they were like, oh, he's trying to offer me stuff. And the moment that I tell them like, oh yeah, they have to make 3 offers to you, because if management listens on your call, because every call is recorded for quality assurance. If a manager listens to your call to coach you and they don't hear the 3 offers, they have to write you up. That write-up goes to the operations manager, who immediately fires you. But you'll come to work one day, you'll scan in to get in the building, you'll get to your computer, you'll log into all your systems, you're getting ready to hit ready, and then your team lead's like, hey, Joe, the operations manager, he wants to see you. So go ahead and put yourself in your code in meeting and lock your computer and go see him. Then you go to see Joe, the operations manager. He's like, yeah, we just wanted to let you know that we're going to part ways. And they take your badge, they walk you out on the floor, and everyone's looking. So it's embarrassing because you're being walked out. I know this because I have watched 182 people get walked out for that same very reason. And so when I told this person that, they were like, oh, so they have to do it or they lose their job. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, damn, man, that sucks. If I'd known, I would have just been patient and just let them do it. And I'm like, but it's so different because on the call with the customer, when you try to do it, they don't want to hear anything you got to say. They just want to cut you off, shut you up, and get the info. They don't even realize that if they don't let that retention rep at least make 3 offers, that they're going to get fired. And the rule was that no company could hold your number. They couldn't hold your number hostage. Even if you owed a balance on financing a device, they couldn't hold your number hostage. So I would always try to explain it to people like, look, if you're intending to port out, you're going to get your port out information no matter what. I just, need to see if you might be interested in these offers. You can say no to them. That's always worked out for me. I'd always set the premise for people. I'd be like, if they're like, yeah, I need to get my account number, I would just ask a question like, oh, sounds like you might have found something better than what we're offering with a different provider. And the person will actually open up there. Yeah, I'm going to go to T-Mobile and get this, that. Plus two, Sprint phones suck. You can't browse and be on the phone at the same time. And I'll be like, okay, well, not a problem. Let me get your information pulled up. And while I'm doing that, like, look, you don't have to accept these at all whatsoever. I just have to be able to, like, tell you what offers we have for you, at least. But you do not have to get these offers if you don't want. And they'll be like, okay, like, well, what you got? And I'll just hit them with the 3 offers that we have, that's on our system for how long they were with the, Sprint. And then I would tell them the offers. They'd be like, nah, I don't want that. I'd rather go with T-Mobile. And they'll be like, okay, well, do you have a paper pen handy? Because I do have your account number available for you. I'll go slow. And then, yeah, just give them their info. But yeah, if you didn't give 3 offers, you would get fired. Sprint was just really, really on that because their churn rate, which, is like how many customers leave, was high. It was high on so many levels. I mean, there were just so many things that was wrong with it. The unlimited freedom plan, there was like 10 variations of it, right? And people were confused. And then you had store reps lying to customers. They'd be like, oh yeah, we're going to put you on the unlimited freedom plan, where you pay for the first line and the other 4 lines are free and you get Hulu. And the person's like, cool. And so they get all these phones and everything like that. The first bill comes in, they're billed incorrectly. They're billed on the original unlimited freedom, which was $65 for the first line, $55 for the second line. And then lines 3 to 5, they were billed at $35 per line. So yeah, you can do the math there. And then think about it, like all those lines had iPhones, like everyone got the iPhone 7, they were financing it. And what was even more worse on Sprint's side was customers who thought that they were on installment billing, right? Because Sprint had 2 different ways for you to get phones. You can go on the lease program, or you could go on installment billing. The installments, that version was you were financing the phone to own it. So depending on your credit, you could have a down payment or not a down payment. Either way, you would pay a monthly amount, a monthly payment until the phone was paid off after 24 months. 24 months was the longest of a contract that we could have a customer on for a phone. But a lot of the Sprint store reps, to get commission, were putting people on the Sprint lease. And the leasing program, if explained in the beginning before a customer bought a phone, I guarantee you a lot of customers would have not gone with Sprint leasing. Because the benefit of leasing on Sprint was you would lease the phone for between 18 to 24 months. 18 is the earliest you can upgrade. And what you would do is you would return the device in as good as condition as you could have kept it, right? They would prefer you guys kept it in immaculate, condition, but they know some people have like accidents, they drop stuff or whatever. So anyways, now if you didn't want to upgrade and you were like, no, I'm not going to upgrade, I really like my iPhone 7 Plus, I'm going to keep it for another 2 years. Then you had to hit them with the bad news, which was, okay, well, you were leasing it, you don't want to upgrade, so there is a buyout price. And that pissed off so many customers because they're like, wait a minute, I've been paying this amount monthly for the iPhone 7 Plus. I thought I owned the phone. And they're like, you got to break it. They're like, no, you were paying to lease it. You were leasing it. And then they were like, well, the store rep told me that I would own it at the end of the contract. And you have to explain back to them like, nope, you don't own it. Then they'll be like, what's the buyout price? And then you got to hit them with that 1-2 combo, right? The thing that's just going to send them off the edge. It's like, oh yeah, your buyout price is $187. Like, whoa, they flipped their top. And it was sad because store reps would lie to customers and be like, yeah, you're going to own the phone, after the contract's over. But they put them on Sprint leasing, not installment billing. Why did they do the leasing over the installment billing? They got a higher commission if they got you on a Sprint leasing versus installments. Installments, you're paying to own it. So at the end of the 24 months, your last final payment, you would own the phone. Sprint made more money when people leased the phone, because they would upgrade to the next phone and pay on that to lease every month, or they would have to buy out the phone at the end of them already paying like well over $600 for the phone, right? Think about it. When you're leasing an iPhone 7 Plus and your monthly payment for the iPhone 7 Plus is $33.33, right? You do the math, do 18 months, 18 payments of that, then do 24 payments of that, right? You get a figurative idea of how much money Sprint was making. And then there's the buyout price at the end, which could have been, $187 to $250. Yeah, it wasn't good for a lot of people. So, Sprint's biggest downfall and why T-Mobile was able to overtake them in third place was that you had John Ledger as the CEO of T-Mobile pushing the Un-carrier move, which, the current CEO is completely stripping away. John Ledger listened to customers, and so he wanted to do things that he saw customers suggest that these carriers do. He started to implement those things, going fully unlimited, upgrading devices, and when you can upgrade devices. He was changing a lot of things, and it sounded good to customers, and customers flocked. And, with customers flocking, Sprint was definitely hurting really bad. So you have all that into play. You have, the CEO of SoftBank more focused on merging, trying to butter up the FCC chairman. They totally neglected Sprint. They totally abandoned them. I had both Sprint and T-Mobile in 2004. Cell reception was identical in the city. Sprint was on EVDO and T-Mobile was on GPRS for data. Yeah, for sure. Because Sprint was still kind of relying on they're relying on a hybrid of CDMA and LTE, right? This is why, like, back in the day, most people didn't know, like in 2015, 2016, when you bought a Sprint phone, you got a SIM card. But that SIM card was only for the LTE connection. If you pulled the SIM card out and you powered your phone on, like the SIM card being gone from the phone would just boot up and it would just connect to 3G because they were still running on CDMA, which, obviously that was CDMA. Yes, it had faster channels and faster data delivery, but it was at the same time too, it just wasn't the greatest, which leads me to my next point with Sprint. Sprint tries to go all in on WiMAX, right? They try to partner with Clearwire and they wanted to develop and expand WiMAX, which put them behind T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon that was more focused on LTE. WiMAX was fast. I give it that. It was fast. However, it killed batteries quickly. Like, I remember, because like where I lived at in Phoenix at the time when I had Sprint, we didn't have LTE access because Sprint wasn't focused on LTE access. They were focused on WiMAX, and WiMAX wasn't being built out in Phoenix. LTE was. So I remember when I went to Hawaii to visit my sister. In Hawaii, they built out some WiMAX connections, right? So I was like, oh my god, for the first time on my Samsung Galaxy Epic 4G Touch, the S2, I saw the 4G symbol pop up. I was like, oh, wow, we got WiMAX, right? And my battery, mind you, at the time, when I had gotten to where I was at the swap meet with my sister at the Aloha Stadium. And I was like, oh, I got WiMAX connection. I'm like, oh, like, yeah, like, this is cool. I got faster speeds than 3G. My battery was at 100% because I charged it in the car. And I kid you guys not, the first 10 minutes of walking around, just checking out, like what different vendors were selling and getting some snacks to eat and everything, my battery reduced from 100% to 70% in like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It was going down. And all I did was just get on the phone and I think I was uploading pictures to Google Plus and Instagram. And whoo, man, it killed the battery fast. Luckily, the Epic 4G Touch, that phone had removable battery, and I had bought, I think it was like five additional batteries with the external charger, so I can just swap batteries out throughout my day, and then charge the batteries at night when I got home and I was going to sleep. So yeah, what did Sprint do with their devices when they merged with T-Mobile? I mean, they unlocked them so they can work with T-Mobile. Yeah, remember by the time that Sprint merged into T-Mobile, they were already heavily invested in LTE. That they had moved away from CDMA, so it was just simply unlocking their phone and letting a T-Mobile SIM go into it. A matter of fact, I think like one of my neighbors had a Sprint phone. He had an HTC Sprint phone, and when the merger happened, he had to go to Sprint so they can unlock the phone for him, and then because they were closing up the Sprint stores and everything like that, and a T-Mobile SIM worked in it. Actually, Sprint was on 1X RTT. Yeah. Sprint made a lot of bad choices. WiMAX was a bad choice. Partnering with Clearwire didn't go anywhere. Their focus on trying to buy T-Mobile to merge with them, that hurt them. The FCC wasn't going to let them do it. And by the time the FCC was considering it, T-Mobile had moved into third place. They had garnered so many customers from Sprint. It was like Sprint became the fourth carrier. It dropped on that pole position. So now T-Mobile had the upper hand. And that's the reason why with the merger, Deutsche Telekom and T-Mobile were going to be the ones who had more control, right? When you look at the earlier merger that Mr. Forsey was head up of, when Nextel and Sprint merged, and he tried to make it a 50-50 merger split, right? That didn't work out so well for Sprint. The merging was horribly executed, and Sprint suffered. Sprint suffered majorly. So, I mean, yeah, when you look at all the things that Sprint has done, you could say that if Boost doesn't follow that pattern, and that's the reason why. So, like, giving away the free lines and stuff like that, that's something that I see like Boost is adopting from Sprint, and I think it's a bad idea. When you look at Sprint, they had so many people, like that was the only reason why people would stay with Sprint. They would sign up with Sprint, they would get the unlimited freedom plan where they would pay like for 2 lines, and lines 3 to 5 was free for the first year. A lot of people were getting on that plan to have a family plan, to have a cheap bill. Once the 1 year was coming up, they would port out to T-Mobile. I'm happy being on Cricket Wireless. I don't need deals. I buy my devices outright. Those deals when under a contract is hard to get out of. Yeah, I mean, they're a lot easier though than like back in the day when they used to have ETF. You guys remember those things? I don't like you guys. I want to leave. Sure, you can leave. You just have to pay $300 to cancel your contract, or we can take you to court. So when everyone was like, "Oh yeah, they don't do contracts anymore," I remember so many people used to always get mad at me because they would tell me on the phone while I was talking to them, they were going to port out to T-Mobile. They're like, T-Mobile doesn't do early termination fees and contracts, so I'm going to go with them. And I'd be like, no, you are going on a contract. It's just not called a contract. It's called, a device upgrade with installments. They would always tell me like, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. Hope your dog dies of this, that. And I'm just like, wow, you would curse my dog to die just because I said that you'll still be on the contract. Because it's true, right? Think about it. If you upgrade and you get a device on payments, right? If you wanted to leave them, what do you got to do? Well, you got to call in. You got to say, I want to leave. I want to take my number. They'll be like, okay, well, you can go. And it's like, oh, I want to unlock the phone. I'm taking the phone to my new carrier. Be like, you got to pay off the phone. Nah, so taking the phone away from the network on someone else's network, you have to pay, which is the remaining balance of the phone, kind of like an ETF, right? So it may not be identical to 2-year contracts, 3-year contracts, but it kind of is. That's how they get you. That's why, like what Melissa says here, buy your phones outright. I mean, if you want to buy your phones like how you would do through a carrier on deals, there's things like Zip. Zip allows you to purchase something and then pay over time for that purchased item. right? So they'll loan you the money up front to buy the item outright, but you're like making biweekly installments until it's paid off. This is why you have all those other brand things like Klarna and all that. So there's ways for you to get fully unlocked devices and to be able to make payments on it. You don't have to go through a carrier. I mean, the carriers obviously they offer you these deals because they want you to stay. They want you to be locked in on what they're offering, and they wanted to make it hard for you to leave, and they want to make money off of you. So those are the things that they're looking at when they have these deals. Like I said, Boost Mobile has the iPhone 16e for $49.99. Hell of a deal when you port your number over. So one, you got to bring your number over from another carrier. Two, you got to be on the $60 plan, which is their most expensive plan. And the 16e has to be active on their network for 1 year in order for them to consider unlocking it. So if you want to leave, you can leave, but you can't take your iPhone 16e because it's still locked, which I would tell you guys right now that there are certain trustworthy like device network unlockers out there, third-party ones that will do it. So keep that in mind. It's never a guarantee 100% device unlock, but they do their best. But yeah, they're out to make money off of you. You can leave, but you won't take your phone. Excuse me, I had a rough night. I barely got any sleep, so I am tired. But other than that, I mean, I would say the FCC needs to back off Boost Mobile. Because there's people that's like, Boost Mobile is going to sell. I don't think Dish is going to sell Boost Mobile. Well, EchoStar, because EchoStar owns them. I do know that Boost is ready to go head-to-head with T-Mobile on D2D or direct-to-device, so satellite-to-device connection rather than cell tower to device. They are getting ready to do that. That's what they're focusing on. So we'll see how that goes. As far as Boost Mobile goes, I don't want to see us drop down to a 3-carrier thing, because then we lose the advantage that we have of having cheap plans. You already see it because Boost is not taken serious as the 4th carrier. T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon have raised prices. Because in their mind, it's like, what are you going to do? Go to Boost Mobile and have terrible service? Like, we have limitations on what their customers can do. They can only get 30 gigs of data on their cheapest plan. We're offering fully unlimited, and everybody wants fully unlimited data, which is why Peter Adderton and Mobile X, they stress so hard to try to tell people, hey, if you look at your service and you see that you only use 1 gig of data a month, why are you going to pay for fully unlimited when you can just pay a cheaper phone plan with us? Control that. This is why it's there. So they know. Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, they know. To them, it's like, where are you going to go? Boost Mobile? Good luck. We'll see you in a month or two. They're that cocky about it. I remember getting my first Samsung, the S7 Edge, with Sprint through Best Buy. They had a promo through Best Buy. I forget which plan I was on. You was paying $20 a month. You're probably on the unlimited. You were probably on one of the unlimited freedom variants. They had 10 running at the same time. It was so crazy. It was so crazy. Yeah, I did see the when people were discussing the loophole for Metro's new unlock. I seen that. The way that I got my Galaxy, not Galaxy, sorry. I was thinking about your phone for a second. I was like, the Galaxy S7 Edge, I miss that phone. When I'm talking about Sprint, I'm reminiscing the days when I was at work and how much fun I had at work with everybody. I miss my coworkers. It was fun working at Sprint. Stressful, but it was still fun. Anyways, where was I going? Oh, how I got the Moto G Stylus 2024. How I got that unlocked from Metro. Because the phone the phone in itself, because it still said 120 days. Yeah, 120 days before device is unlocked. I screenshotted that and I filed a complaint with the FCC and sent them all the screenshots, the chat with the customer care and how they treated me. And they didn't really treat me bad from Metro, but they were just like, no, we can't unlock it. It has to be active for a year. You can't unlock it till August of 2025. I'm like, no, that ain't happening. So after I filed a complaint with the FCC, I think it was like 22 days later, I got a notification that my device was restarting. And after it restarted, where it said network status, it said unlocked. But all they did was unlock it where you could use any SIM card. Like I tried to use an eSIM with it, and it wouldn't let you. It wouldn't even bring up where you could use a QR code to install an eSIM. It like every time you would hit install eSIM, it would just check through Metro if there was an eSIM available. So while they did unlock the physical SIM, it totally sucked that you couldn't use eSIM on the Moto G Stylus 5G 2024 from Metro on another provider. So anyways, I am going to slowly wrap this up. So I do have a bit of announcement. We are literally 12 days away from the Pixel 10 launch. I am not going to pre-order the phone. And the reason why is like yesterday I was talking with B-Tech and he was like, I was so excited. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait for the 20th. Google Fi is going to have it for pre-order. So I'm going to pre-order my Pixel 10. And then B-Tech was like, yo, I would wait, man, for like some deals. And I thought about it. I'm like, he's right. Because the deals are going to come. I may not be one of the first people to unbox it or to do a review on it, but by godly, I'm going to get that phone on a deal. Because we're going to see deals with Google Fi where they could be like, get a Pixel 10, for 10% off, 20% off. And that would be so cool. Do you prefer Mint over Fi? No, I don't prefer Mint over Fi. The reason is the benefits that I get from Google Fi I use. I have like 6 phones with SIMs in it from Google Fi. They're all pulling from one line. I have my main phone, which is my Pixel 9a. This has my main SIM in it. And then the Pixel 6a has data only eSIM. My Pixel 7a has data only eSIM. My iPhone 11 Pro Max has data only eSIM. And my iPhone 12 has data only eSIM. And so, yes, I have 4 data. And then there's the Galaxy S21 that has the physical data only SIM card in it. So I have all these phones, and yes, they're all pulling from the 100 gigabytes of data that I have a month. I use home Wi-Fi, so I rarely go even close to 100 gigs of data usage in a month. So that's the reason why I keep Google Fi for me. It's just the data only SIM cards, the Google One access, the YouTube Premium for 6 months, and then yeah. So Google Fi's QCI on T-Mobile's network is QCI 6, I believe, 6 or 7. I know that their priority is above Metro. Oh, which is a good thing. By the way, if anyone's interested in trying Google Fi, in the description, there is a referral code that gets you $60 credit for signing up with them. That gets you guys credit. I make nothing on it because I already maxed it out like last year. I was only allowed to make up to $600 in credit with Google Fi by sharing my referral code. And so I don't know why they didn't downgrade my referral code back to $20 like everybody else. So other people have actually confirmed to me when they used my referral code, they got the $60 credit on their first bill. So I was like, cool. Plus, the other thing about Google Fi is they're like postpaid. So you use the service first and then you pay for it after. So like my bill cycle ends on the 28th of every month. And then my bill is due like on the 8th or 9th of the next month. So it's pretty much like it's an MVNO postpaid. So weird. But yeah, I prefer Google Fi over Mint. Mint, I would say Mint would be a good option for people if they want to buy in bulk. That's where I would say Mint would be the best at, because you have 3 months, 6 month, and annual plans that you can just buy and use and not have to worry about it. So for me, I will tell you guys the honest truth. When you run out of data on Google Fi, when you pass 100 gigs of data and you're slowed down, it is still pulling 256 kilobits per second. So the only thing you're really going to be able to do with that is like pull up a web page that's, requiring 18 kilobits to open. It's slow. It's not 512. I've been saying this for a long time, and I know this is going to happen here in the next 3 years or so, but the default drop back for plans that throttle, I believe, is going to be LTE in the future, in the next 3 years. But no, Google Fi is sluggish after you pass that 100 gigs. Like I said, if you use over 100 gigs of data, I would never recommend Google Fi to anybody, because you will definitely burn that quick. I don't, because I use home Wi-Fi when I'm home. And when I'm done, like at the end of the month, I usually end my month using like 30 to 40 gigabytes of 5G or LTE data. That's how much on Wi-Fi I am. Since I work from home, I'm always on Wi-Fi. Anyways, I am gonna go ahead and eat me some breakfast. I appreciate everyone for coming in and hanging out and chatting with me and whatnot on this Chill Friday. Please don't forget to hit the like button. That does definitely help out. There is a video dropping later on today, in a couple of hours, so don't miss that video when it goes live. And yeah, does the international work best with Pixel phones? I mean, it depends. Will it work on OnePlus going to Europe? Yes, it'll work on OnePlus going to Europe. Like Google Fi has before I end it, Google Fi has completely shifted away, right, with US Cellular being one of the providers that they use. They used to be about like switching, right? Because back then you had Sprint and T-Mobile, then you had US Cellular. So the Fi switch, which was switching between networks, worked best with Pixels, because Pixels were able to do that, right? If you brought in any other phone, you would default be on T-Mobile's network. So it's through T-Mobile how Google is able to get all these international deals with international providers and their networks. So yes, your OnePlus will work if you go to Europe, and you would have basically your data allotments. If you're on the unlimited premium, 100 gigs of high-speed data when you go to Europe, that's what you're using. There's not like a separate international data allotment, which I wish they would do. I wish they would, like, for the unlimited premium, if I ran Google Fi, I would give my customers 100 gigs of high-speed data in the US and then 100 gigs of high-speed data to use internationally. And in that way, because people do more when they're on vacations. They take more photos, they take more videos, and they need to back those things up to like whatever cloud backup they use, whether they use Dropbox, Google Photos, that they use Retro. Retro is a pretty cool app. It's like social media cloud backup combined. But yeah, there's like various different cloud options that people use, and so you need to give them more data. Yeah, not a problem, Jonathan. Thanks for hanging out, chilling out. Thank you, everyone, for coming and hanging out, chilling out. I appreciate you guys. Check out the video that drops later on today as that goes live. And yeah, definitely, I will see you guys later.